Hey, Mouse, what year was that map made?
Oh, I don't know. Probably a couple hundred years before.
Oh, wow!
President Lincoln, George Washington, Martin Sheen.
Martin
Sheen, that's President Kennedy, you idiot!
Was there a difference? I mean, he played Kennedy once.
Oh, that's really smart. I'm glad to know you're using your brain.
He was the quintessential 80s teen idol, a boy with charm, talent, and a presence that lit up the silver screen. From the Goonies to Stand By Me to the Lost Boys, he was everywhere, shaping pop culture and defining a generation. But beneath the glitz of Tinseltown, Corey Feldman's life was anything but golden. His childhood, stolen by the very industry that made him famous, was filled with darkness, manipulation, and a haunting secret that Hollyweird fought to keep buried. This is the untold story of how the underbelly of Hollyweird exploited and discarded one of its most beloved stars. Welcome to Behind the Stardom, a lost boy in a Hollyweird nightmare. Corey Feldman was one of the most recognizable faces of the 1980s. A child actor turned teen heartthrob, starring in some of the most iconic films of the decade. He was Hollywood gold, but behind the charming smile and the blockbuster hits, the child fighting battles no one should ever have to face. Exploited by his own family, manipulated by a predatory industry, and later blacklisted for daring to expose its darkest secrets, Corey Feldman's story is not just a cautionary tale, it's a chilling expose of the horrors lurking beneath Hollyweirds polished surface. Corey Feldman was born into show business, but his home life was far from a Hollyweird dream. Raised in a toxic household, Corey was pushed into acting at the tender age of 3, appearing in commercials before landing roles in TV shows like Mork and Mindy and 8 is Enough. His parents, particularly his mother, saw his success as a financial opportunity rather than a career. She saw him as a meal ticket rather than her son. He later described her as emotionally abusive, controlling, and obsessed with his weight, allegedly starving him, locking him in his room, and physically abusing him to maintain his marketable appearance. But the horrors didn't stop there. Despite his miserable home life, Corey was a natural in front of the camera. By the early 80s, he was starring in some of the biggest films of the decade. In 1984, Gremlins, Feldman played Pete Fontaine, the mischievous best friend of Billy in this darkly comedic horror classic. Though his role was small, the film's massive box office success, grossing over $200 million worldwide, helped put him on Hollyweirds radar. This was his first major film appearance, and working with big names like Steven Spielberg, executive producer, positioned him for bigger opportunity. 1985, The Goonies. This iconic adventure film, produced by Steven Spielberg and directed by Richard Donner, became an instant classic. Feldman stole scenes as Mouth, the sharp-tongued, fast-talking prankster whose wit and comedic timing made him a standout. The film's massive popularity cemented his status as a rising child star. To this day, The Goonies remains one of the most beloved films of the 80s, ensuring Feldman's place in cinematic history. 1986, Stand By Me. In one of his most critically acclaimed roles, Feldman played Teddy Duchamp, a troubled yet fiercely loyal kid who masked his pain with bravado. The film, based on Stephen King's novella, The Body, was a deeply emotional coming-of-age story that resonated with audiences. Unlike his previous fun-loving role, this character had depth and vulnerability, showing Feldman's reign as a serious actor. The movie was a commercial and critical hit, earning an Oscar nomination and solidifying Feldman as one of Hollyweirds' top young talents. 1987, The Lost Boys. This cult classic horror film launched Feldman into teen idol status. He played Edgar Frog, a vampire-hunting comic book nerd with an attitude, opposite Jason Patric and Kiefer Sutherland. The film's dark, edgy tones and rebellious energy define 80s youth culture, making it one of the decade's most beloved films. The Lost Boys wasn't just another hit. It turned Feldman into a pop culture icon. His chemistry with co-star Corey Haim also led to their infamous pairing as the two Coreys, Hollywood duo that would both define and haunt his career. Feldman was quickly becoming one of the most in-demand young actors in Hollywood. He had charisma, comedic timing, and the ability to bring depth to his performances. But as his fame grew, so did the vultures circling him. As Corey navigated his way through the Hollyweird elite, he was introduced to an underworld that few outsiders knew existed. While the public saw a talented young star, Corey was living a nightmare behind the scenes. By the time he was a teenager, he had fallen victim to one of Hollyweird's worst-kept secrets, an underground ring of powerful men who preyed on vulnerable child actors. He and his best friend, fellow 80s icon Corey Haim, were both victims of this predatory culture. According to Feldman, Haim suffered the worst of it, abused by high-profile figures who walked away unscathed while he spiraled into addiction. For years, Corey Feldman struggled to break free from the demons of his past. His exposure to this predatory environment led him down a dark path. Introduced to drugs at a young age, he turned to substance abuse to numb the trauma. Hollyweird not only tolerated his self-destruction, it encouraged it. As Corey entered his late teens, his once promising career started to decline. He struggled with drug addiction, leading to multiple arrests for heroin possession in the late 80s and early 90s. The industry, which had profited from him for years, quickly abandoned him. His friendship with Corey Haim, once inseparable, became strained as both battled their own demons. Haim, haunted by his past abuse, spiraled into heavier drug use. The two Coreys attempted a comeback with the reality TV show The Two Coreys in 2007, but it quickly became apparent that Haim was too far gone. In 2010, Corey Haim died of pneumonia after years of drug abuse, a tragic end that many believe was the direct result of his childhood trauma. Feldman, now sober, tried to make a comeback in Hollyweird, but the industry had other plans. He had begun speaking out about the rampant abuse of child actors, and instead of being supported, he was labeled as crazy and washed up. He claimed that when he attempted to name names, he was threatened with lawsuits, his projects were mysteriously shut down, and he was blacklisted by major studios. His career took a nosedive, and Hollyweird turned its back on him. Feldman vowed to expose the sinister truth about the industry that destroyed so many lives, including theirs. Despite facing threats, lawsuits, and being blacklisted from mainstream Hollyweird, Corey Feldman has spent years speaking out about the widespread abuse of child actors. His documentary, My Truth, The Rape of Two Coreys, aimed to expose the names behind the horror, but powerful forces allegedly tried to silence him at every turn. On the night of its release, the documentary's website was mysteriously hacked, preventing thousands of people from watching. Feldman insisted that this was part of a larger effort to silence him. Many brushed him off as crazy, but as more former child stars have come forward with similar allegations, his words have become harder to ignore. Despite the backlash, he has continued to speak out, calling for reforms in Hollyweird to protect child actors from the same fate he and Haim suffered. But even now, the industry refuses to acknowledge the dark truth. The same people who profited off Corey as a child turned their backs on him as an adult. Corey Feldman has made it his mission to ensure that the next generation of child actors won't have to endure what he did. His story isn't just about fame. It's a story of survival in an industry that chews up and spits out its brightest young talents. It's about the price of telling the truth in a town built on secrets. And most of all, it's a haunting reminder that behind Hollyweird's flashing lights, there are shadows where the real horror lies. He was a child star who had everything: fame, fortune, and talent, but lost it all to the darkness of an industry that consumes its young. Unlike so many others, he lived to tell his tale, though at great personal cost. While Hollyweird continues to shine its artificial light, the shadows of its past can't be ignored forever. But the question remains, will Hollyweird ever be forced to reckon with the monsters it protects? Welcome to the dark side of Hollyweird, where innocence is currency and silence is golden. Join us as we peel back the layers of Tinseltown's brightest stars and expose the hidden cost of their fame. From exploitation to manipulation, we uncover the untold truths of what really happened behind the cameras. Until next time, remember, Hollyweird is a stage where reality often wears a mask, because in the land of dreams, the truth can be a nightmare.
Hey, Mouse, what year was that map made?
Oh, I don't know. Probably a couple hundred years before.
Oh, wow!
President Lincoln. George Washington. Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen?
Sheen, that's President Kennedy, you idiot!
Was that different? I mean, he played Kennedy once.
Oh, that's really smart. I'm glad to know you're using your brain.
Lisa!